the secret of the sea. I love its beauty passing well. I love the thunder of its swell. I love the glory of its play, the glitter of its feathery spray. But its secret is hid from me. Who knows the mighty secret? What gives the sea its power? We cannot find the secret. We cannot find the key. Why does the image of God feel such passion for cold, salt water? Why do immortal spirits created only a little lower than the angels fall so desperately in love with a trillion tons of H2O laced with NaCl? Most books about the sea are full of external data. They tell you what causes storms, for instance. They don't tell you what causes our fascination with storms. They tell you how and why the wind raises waves, but they don't tell you why the waves without raise waves of wonder within. So I'd like to take you on a little exploratory journey with me and try to find the answer to that question by looking at 3 sources of data. I will squint through the telescope of my soul at myself, since the soul is a kind of circularly twisted telescope, and at 2 kinds of external data, the sea itself and the millions of words written about it, especially by the poets. But I find my data first in myself, not first in the poets. For if I did not find it in myself, I would not be able to find it in the poets. Just as there are things about a woman that only a woman can understand, so there are things about the sea that only the sea within me can understand. What is the sea to me? If I had to say it in one word, I would use the word magic. No matter how tired I am, the sight and sound and smell and touch and taste of the sea wake me up. I become instantly alert, awake, aware, alive, aroused. Once, after 10 hours of the most exhausting day of my life, when I was too tired, literally, to climb a single flight of stairs, I threw myself into the waves, and they gave me 4 solid hours of the energy of a 4-year-old, and I forgot totally to eat supper. Now, where does that energy come from? Not from me. I was a dry little sponge. It comes from my magic mother, filling the sponge as air fills a balloon. She's magic to my soul. She gives me not only 4-year-old energy, but 4-year-old happiness. After an hour of smiling at her and not realizing I'm smiling, my face feels funny. I don't smile that much. I'm a Red Sox fan. Of course, all of nature is full of a kind of magic. Star stuff becoming a planet, a seed becoming a tree, primordial slime evolving into rational, sophisticated slime. But all that takes time. The sea's magic is instantaneous. My soul obeys her magic wand as instantly as the universe obeyed the Creator's word, be. Are those little bangs in my soul echoes of the Big Bang, I wonder? As soon as I see waves, unless I stop myself, I run madly into them and whack them with the loving embrace of a baby elephant. When I splash in them, I feel like a kitten rooting in her mother's nipples. When I'm by the sea, I notice that I'm breathing more deeply. I notice that I notice more. I notice how the air feels because I notice the sea air. I notice all colors because I notice the color of the sea today. Every day she's a little different. I notice all smells because I notice how she smells today. That difference is subtler but also detectable. So the sea does to me exactly what a good lover does. A good lover gives you more energy to love everything. A bad lover drains away your energy into himself like a vampire. A good lover is like a fountain. A bad lover is like a whirlpool. So the sea is a good lover to me. And not just to me. Look at our external data. On a summer day at the beach, how many people are in the water? Maybe half. Why do the other half come to the beach? They can get a suntan inland just as well. Suppose there were no ocean there, who would come? Even for those who sit on the sand and never go into the sea, it's not the sand, but the sea that they love. No one goes to the desert to sit in the sand and the sun. It's being near her that we want. It satisfies something in us that is as deep and big and mysterious as the sea herself. What is that something? The sea without calls to our sea within, deep calling unto deep at the noise of the waterspouts, and the tides of our spirit move to the gravity of the sea. What is that inner sea? When we are at the place where the sea and the land meet, why do we always love to look at the sea rather than at the land? As Robert Frost writes, the people along the sand all turn and look one way. They turn their back on the land. They look at the sea all day. Robert Frost knew where the magnetic pole of the human spirit was located, just offshore, in the waves. But why? This is data. What is the explanation? Why do we feel like Edna St. Vincent Millay, exiled in our own world, the world of men, and at home in the world of fishes? She writes, searching my heart for its true sorrow, this is the thing I find to be, that I am weary of words and people, sick of the city, wanting the sea. But why? Suppose we dared to keep repeating ourselves. What would we find if we were as brash and bothersome as a 4-year-old, asking not just why, but why, forever, until we found it? What is this it? What is her power over our hearts? Carl Sandburg says, the sea hugs us and will not let us go. Yes, but what are her arms? Notice the grammar of his statement. She is the subject and we are the object, rather than vice versa. But how can the sea be active and the human spirit passive under her spell? We act upon the sea with our ships, but she acts upon our souls with her waves. We conquer her physically, but she conquers us spiritually. How does she have such a power? Here's my first clue. I think it has something to do with time and childhood. The sea turns clocks back. We babble like children or mystics when we contemplate her. We say, backward, turn backward, O time in thy flight, make me a child again just for one night. Do you remember the very first time you ever heard the sound of the sea, or your very first sight of it? You never saw anything so big before, and you never will until you die. When we have to leave the sea, we feel like children parted from their mother and from home, because home means where mother is. I feel homesick for the sea, but how can that be? Was I not born on land? Am I really the angel of the sea with amnesia? Am I an amphibian? Did the sea cough me up on a beach in a storm? Was I born inside Jonah's whale? Am I a merman? I feel exactly like a merman trying to walk on land. My body has legs, but my soul has fins. Why does my soul feel that way? I don't know the answer to those questions, but I do know that I have to go to the sea because I have to follow my soul, and my soul is there already. There's an infinite sea within somewhere. The sea is the goal and purpose of all the water on earth, every plashing brook and running rivulet and roaring river, but it's also the goal of the moving water of our hearts, our longings and desires. Our spirit water follows its love gravity to the end. We're satisfied only at the sea because we are rivers. But that only tells us where we find what we want, at the sea. It doesn't tell us what we want there. We know what we long for, but we don't know what it is that we long for when we long for it. Is the gravity that draws our soul to the sea in us, or is it in the sea? What is the link between the matter without and the spirit within, between salt water and love? Is it the sea water in our souls, or is it the soul in the sea water? Or is that very question the wrong one, one that could be asked only by a modern mind that has separated reality into mere matter without and mere spirit within, the mentality of Descartes and the so-called Enlightenment? Perhaps we can begin to read this riddle if we examine our love more carefully. And when we do, we find a second clue. We find that we love not just the sea, but the seaside, the boundary, the beach. It takes boundaries to make anything interesting. If a picture did not have the boundary of its frame, it would trail off into vague everythingness. Life's most dramatic moments are her two boundaries, entrance and exit, birth and death. Light overcoming darkness is more interesting than endless light. We love boundaries. Robert Frost wrote, something there is that does not love a wall, but something there is that does. We love to explore and test boundaries. Parental authority when we're children, fashion when we're teenagers, fashionable dogmas when we're scientists or scholars. So we also love to explore the boundary between sea and land. If the whole planet were land without sea, or sea without land, it would be as boring as if the whole of humanity were male without female, or female without male. Like male and female, the sea is most interesting at its boundaries because that's where most of the turbulence and tumbling and drama and conflict and lovemaking and ecstasy happens. The land's point of ecstasy, where it reaches beyond itself into the sea, is the beach. The sea's point of ecstasy, where it reaches beyond itself into the land, is the waves. The sea is like sex. It's interesting because it's other. This otherness of place, the beach, also seems to have a power to attract an otherness of time. The very young and the very old love the beach the best. Your first summer at the sea and your last are two of the most poignant times in your life. Look at the young. Heedless of time, they play with the great mother's untiring waves, which are also heedless of time. How remarkable that those who are bored the quickest with everything else, the young, the ones with the shortest attention spans, are always the last to want to leave the beach. And what attracts the old? The sea prepares them for their journey to eternity. They know that the shore is an icon of death, and they will soon be crossing the bar. They're reconnoitering. And death obviously makes life interesting because it is other, the undiscovered country. It's the edge. How much more interesting would this planet be if it were flat? Then it would have an edge, and you could fall off it. Well, the world is flat in time, even if not in space, and we do fall off the edge at death. And even in space, there is an image of this. Even in space, the world does have an edge. The edge is the sea, and you can fall into it. And you want to. Let's explore a third clue, the clue of our history, the history of our thoughts about the sea. Perhaps our past can shed some light on our present. Mother, that's what the sea was for all of us until a few millennia ago. To all our ancestors who made the myths, she was she. Perhaps a goddess, perhaps a demon, but certainly a spirit, and always a woman to me. To the Jews, and then to the Christians and Muslims who were their disciples, she was no longer a goddess, but not yet a chemical. She was an icon. She was de-deified, but not demythologized. She was no longer worshipped, but she was still wondered at. She was alive. Her waves clapped their hands with joy when they felt their Creator's breath blow over them. Her performances were all command performances. We religious crazies, we believing and practicing Christians and Jews and Muslims, know a secret about the sea that our secular friends do not know. They have visions of a day, millions of years away, when the last man and the last woman will look at the sea for the last time. In their vision, the sea will outlast us. Just as its life extended far into the past before the coming of this upstart species, Homo sapiens, so it will extend far into the future after that species' final exit from the earth. Remember that last scene in H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. But we know a secret about the future. We know that we will outlast the sea. In fact, when the very stars are all dead, every one of us will still be young. We will outlive the senility of the sea and the sun and the stars and matter itself. The second law of thermodynamics does not touch the soul. Now, knowing that frees us from the ancient temptation to worship the sea or the earth or the stars, and from the modern temptation to worship the laws of nature or the state or any other large mortal things. We stand in the middle between the ancients who worshipped or feared the sea as a she, and the moderns who analyze her as a mere it. We stand with the poets. Like Byron, we call her dark, heaving, boundless, endless, and sublime, dread, fathomless, alone. But to the typically modern mind, she is only an it. She is only cold, salt water, and water in turn is only some molecules of H2O. According to this mind, even the myth maker, the mystic, the poet, and the sailor are themselves only molecules. The modern mistake is ridiculously simple. It is a confusion between what something is and what it's made of. What the sea is infinitely more than what she's made of. The whole is more than the sum of its parts. She is more than her matter. Her form is more than the geometrical shape of her matter. Her form, as Aristotle used the word, is her identity. The myth-maker and the poet and the mystic and the sailor and the saint and the child all know her because they know her. The scientist knows only things about her. They know her identity. He knows only her blood type. Just as a child knows the meaning of mommy better than a sociologist does. Now, though she is not a goddess, she is much more like a goddess than a chemical. I think the pagan mistake of granting her too much is less stupid and dehumanizing than the modern mistake of granting her too little. In Genesis 1, Moses used her as a symbol for all matter, that cosmic stuff that God's Spirit blew on and formed in the creation story in Genesis. Why did Moses call that water? If you watch the stormy sea pacing in its cage like a tiger, you will know. As you watch, you will enter a time machine. You are watching the drama of creation. When God designed Earth's oceans, he painted a picture of his Spirit breathing his timeless passion out onto the heavy seas of time on the first day of creation. And then he hung this picture in his nursery room, Earth, for his children to see once they would be born. But what is it a picture of? Let's look more carefully at one of the old pagan myths before dismissing it. It may contain a clue. It's the geographical myth of Oceanus, the encircling sea. The ancient Greeks' map of Oceanus was not physically accurate, but it was spiritually accurate. To them, ocean was an endless stream that flowed forever around the border of the world, ceaselessly turning upon itself like a wheel, the end of the earth and the beginning of heaven. That was ocean. The sea, the Mediterranean, on the other hand, that was only sea, surrounded by land. It was media terra, in the middle of the earth. Outside was Oceanus. Spiritually, I suggest the Greeks were right and the moderns wrong. For there are only two philosophies. One says that the land is surrounded by the sea, and the other says that the sea is surrounded by the land. The sea, of course, is a natural symbol for spirit and mystery and moreness, transcendence, something more than us. The land is a natural symbol of matter, of reason, and of lessness, of what we can control, what is less than us. So the two philosophies are that the sea is surrounded by the land, that is, spirit is surrounded by matter, or that the land is surrounded by the sea, that is, that matter is surrounded by spirit. All pre-modern societies believed the first philosophy. What we see is a little island. It is surrounded by an immense ocean of what we don't see. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamed of in your philosophy, Horatio. The visible world is only the epidermis of reality, the scrim on the beach, the tip of the iceberg. What lies beneath? Tolkien has this haunting line. Far, far below the deepest delvings of the dwarves, the world is gnawed by nameless things. Something more, something invisible, something mysterious, like the sea. In this ancient worldview, that sea occasionally broke in and flooded the land with storms, miracles. Our civilization is the only one in history arrogant enough to claim to surround the sea, explain the mystery, reduce the unknown to the known, the uncontrolled to the controlled, the supernatural to the natural, spirit to matter, man to ape, soul to brain, love to lust, religion to psychology, God who created man in his image to man who created God in his image. All the saints and poets know better. Roll on, thou deep and dark blue ocean, roll. 10,000 fleets sweep over thee in vain. Man marks the earth with ruin. His control stops with the shore. Upon the watery plain the wrecks are all thy deed, nor doth remain a shadow of man's ravage save his own. When for a moment, like a drop of rain, he sinks into thy depths with bubbling groan, without a grave, unknelled, uncoffined, and unknown. Thus far our daily devotional reading from the pious atheist poet Byron. Or to put the same thing in religious language, arise, O Lord, and let not man prevail. If the poets and saints are right, if all other cultures except our own are right, then mind and spirit and mystery are not some little local latecomer, some evolutionary freak on some minor planet. Rather, all the planets and suns and galaxies, all matter and time and space is only a little local thing, like an island, surrounded by an infinite sea. Our ultimate address, the mind of God. It is at the beach, where sea and land touch, that the question arises, which surrounds which? Are mysteries like love and beauty and death only things in our lives, like puddles? Or are we and our lives surrounded by them, as continents are surrounded by the ocean? Is love in us, or are we in love? Are we bigger than love, or is love bigger than both of us? The answer to this question can be found by asking another question. What do we get bored with, and what don't we? Whatever we get bored with is smaller than us. Our souls eat it and are still hungry, still empty. Our souls are bigger than what they eat. There are a few things we don't get bored with because we can't eat them. They eat us. They are too big to enter into us. We enter into them. Such things as joy and truth, and such things as great music and the sea. And if they're not literally bigger than us, they must be full of something like angels, messengers of something or someone who is bigger. I think it very likely that the sea is full of angels. An angel is a spark of the divine fire, shooting out from God's hair like electricity. Something both irresistibly beautiful and irresistibly fearful, both wonderful and terrible, like Aslan, attracting and repelling at the same time. In fact, attracting in its very repelling, beautiful in its very fearfulness, terrible in its delight, and delightful in its terror, as ambivalent as the Mona Lisa's smile. Its secret must be something huge, something ineluctable, unarguable, and irresistible in its fearsome beauty, something like God, and therefore, like God, also much too simple for us to understand. The mystery of the sea, after all, is only the most obvious example of the mystery of all nature. For not only the sea, but all of nature contains a great mystery. The mystery is this: why does it fascinate us? Why is it inexhaustible to our spirit? Why does nature make us happy as no human art can? Why is a stick and a stone better than a bat and a ball? Why is a forest of trees better than a forest of telephone poles or buildings? It is, but why? We take for granted that it is, and we don't ask why. But this is an extremely difficult question to answer. No practical utilitarian answer will work. We deliberately turn trees into telephone poles or hills of rock into hills of office buildings, and yet we love the raw material much more than we love the things we make out of them. Why? Something in us prefers cities. It must, since we choose to build them and live in them. But something else in us prefers nature, and we all know that that something else, whatever it is older and wiser and happier. What is that wiser something? Why does nature make us happy? Nature's lines are not geometrical. The shape of a wave is inexact and unpredictable. Perhaps that's it. Perhaps because we cannot understand it, cannot understand why they are as they are, why each line in a rock has appeared just there, or each crest of a foam on a wave. We know these things have a reason, but we just don't know them all. Only God does. That's perhaps what we deep down know we need. Perhaps nature does for us what the greatest philosopher of all time, Socrates, did for his fellow Athenians. Teaches us lesson one, our ignorance. Teaches us that we are not God or nature, but humanity. Not daddy or mommy, but baby. If baby understood everything in the house as well as mommy or daddy did, baby would not be baby. And baby would not be happy. Our ignorance in the face of nature makes us happy. So does our weakness. We're happy when we know, as baby knows, that somebody else is in control. If baby had daddy's power and authority, baby would be very unhappy. I think perhaps that is why technology does not make us happy. In order to master nature, we must narrow our focus, like laser light. We have to exchange poetry for mathematics. And this narrows our happiness too, for when we tame nature, we blind ourselves to something in her that we can't tame. And it's that something that makes us happy. We're more deeply happy in the presence of untamed nature, like the sea or a forest, than in the presence of tamed nature, like a saltwater aquarium or a mowed lawn. But what happiness sap flows through those waves and trees? Why does it make our blood race to its rhythms? Dylan Thomas says, "The force that through the green fuse drives the flower drives my red blood." But what force is that? An Iroquois would call it Orenda. A Taoist would call it Tao. But what is Tao? What is the day of Tao? What is the power or force of nature over our soul that makes us so happy? What is the spiritual power of matter? To answer that question, we must see the sea with the third eye. But we are no longer versed in that art of third eye seamanship. This ancient art could be called the art of sign reading. Nature is not just a thing, but also a sign, like a word. and therefore it is not just to be looked at, but also looked along. You look along a sign, not just at it. You read the sign. Modern books about the sea almost always look at it instead of looking along it. So they miss its significance, its signing. They never learned the sign language, which is nature's language. When they see a tree waving in the wind, for instance, they never think the tree is waving at them. It's only being passively moved at random by blind air molecules. They think that nature isn't signing, but spastic. They're like unsocialized children who can't read body language. This habit of sniffing at facts and missing signs typifies our whole modern civilization. It's a dog-like mind. Point to its food, and an untrained dog like mine will sniff at your hand. We've been doggedly sniffing at the sea, experimenting with it, calculating solutions to scientific puzzles about it, conquering it both intellectually and technologically, figuring out how to reverse our pollution of it, but all the while neglecting the ancient and honorable art of sign reading, because we've forgotten that we have another eye, an inner eye. That's not just the eye of the face, the senses, or the eye of the brain, the mind, but the eye of the heart, the third eye, the eye of love. More than love, longing. The Germans call it Sehnsucht, a deep, mysterious longing for something we know not what, some mysterious more. Our hearts see much farther than our minds can follow. And this restless heart of ours always sees its natural icon in the restless sea. When we open this third eye, we immediately sense that the sea is a great sacred sign, an icon, a Jacob's ladder linking earth to heavenly forces, a highway for angels ascending and descending. It brings a smell of heaven to our earth, just as the air in the hallway actually brings tiny molecules of fresh baking bread from the kitchen into the living room, into our noses and lungs. And just as this is an accurate foretaste of what the bread will be when we eat it, I think salt air is somehow an accurate foretaste of heaven. Or you could call it a kiss. The sea gives us a fleeting kiss, not an abstract idea or mental sign or image, but a concrete foretaste, an appetizer of the big kiss God will give us in heaven. That's why it teases and ravishes us. It's foreplay. It's a lover's whisperings. And what does it whisper? It whispers, "Taste and see the goodness of the Lord." But you have to be very silent to hear this whisper. You have to stop thinking words. Words are not meant to capture the sea's mystery, any more than they're meant to capture the strangely similar mystery of music. I think our question about the riddle of the sea is supposed to be asked, but I don't think it's supposed to be answered. I think it's supposed to go on, like waves. God must be like that, for so are our hearts, and so is the sea. Three inexhaustibles. No surfer in the history of the world has ever been heard to pronounce the following sentence: "Now I've had enough waves." And no saint will ever say, "Now I've had enough God." The sea is not God, but the sea is certainly miraculous. People came to disbelieve in miracles only when they forgot the most massive and obvious of all miracles, nature herself. And that's hard to do when you live by the sea. The sea has a personality because her border with the land defines her. And nature has a personality because her border with the supernatural defines her. If you were a naturalist and you believed that nature was only all that there is, how could it have a personality? How could you account for the fact that she is tangy and salty and unpredictable and lively? And she. If there were no he, the word she would be meaningless. So if nature is she, there must be a God, an other. Here is a simple proof that nature is a miracle. A thing caused by God and not by nature is a miracle. But nature is a thing caused by God and not by nature. Therefore, nature is a miracle. Live by the sea and you will see God. The psalmist says, "Thy way was through the sea, thy paths through the great waters, yet thy footprints were unseen." In other words, according to the psalm, God surfs. Like God, she is beauty ancient yet ever new, unchanging yet ever changing, eternal yet dynamic, immovable yet moving, timeless yet alive. Like God, she changes not, yet like God, she is the living one. Deep down we know the sea is like God. Both are vast, deep, mysterious, formless yet full of personality, infinite yet definite, fearsome and wonderful, full of life and mother of all life, source and master of life and death, mother and breaker of living things and their homes, and above all, wild. God is a wild man. If that sentence makes no sense to you, you do not know God. If you want to see any person's soul, you have to look into his eyes. Into them, not at them. Look along the outer eye with your own inner eye. And if you do that, you'll see his mind. Now, do the same thing with the sea that you do with people. Look into her eye, along it, and what will you see? You will see the mind of God. Of course, you can't see God. You can't see any mind with your outer eyes. But when you sit by the sea and watch the waves with both attentiveness and peace, alert and calm, without either laziness or agitation, then your inner eye may open, and you will see the mind of God reflected in his great earthly mirror. That is why there are few atheists at sea, not from fear of death by drowning, but through the magic of water. Sea water is holy water. It baptizes the unconscious. For most of us, the most terrible moments in life are the moments of grief, when hope is tested. But for an atheist, I think, the most terrible moment must be the moment of joy, when there arises from his heart the wisest and best feeling anyone can ever have, cosmic gratitude, praise for his very existence and for the whole universe. And as an atheist, he has to believe that that feeling is false, stupid, wrong, pointless, not in tune with reality, since reality is only molecules and gravity and chance. The feeling of cosmic gratitude and praise was a temptation to be religious. Imagine how it must feel to believe that gratitude is a temptation. That's almost like believing that goodness is evil. It must feel like waking up one morning and see that the sun itself is black. Advice for atheists: beware the sea. Don't live by it, for if you do, you will have to suppress your own heart and scold it for being a fool. The sea is also like God in being a perpetual presence, always there, always itself, so big and heavy that it is the measure and weight of all other things. When you live by the ocean, everything changes, just as when you begin to believe in God. Suddenly you're never alone. There's a very large presence next to you every single minute. And you must consult this large presence every day, unconsciously if not consciously. Just as when you believe in God, you pray every day, unconsciously if not consciously. When a landlubber asks, "What's the weather like today?" he only means to ask about quantities of heat and precipitation and wind velocity. But when a seasider asks that question, he means, "What's she doing today? What's her mood? What's her will? How's she acting?" You see, you always have this unpredictable 500-pound mother-in-law in your backyard. Once, when I was very young, too young to remember how old I was, I think I heard what the sea was saying. I think I heard the secret of the sea. I read the riddle. I cracked the code. The secret language was music. It's angel music, I think. I know it was not human music. It was a music that was there under all human music, like an organ point or pedal point under all melodies, like the bagpipes drone beneath the piped tunes. Only the child in us can hear that sound. It's too deep to register on the adult ear, which scans only for the shriller levels of sound, like a dog whistle. Once when I was very little, I understood that the whole planet must be something like a gigantic musical instrument, perfectly tuned, and the sea was the first bass. That's how I word it now. I had no words then. Who played on this instrument? It must be angels. Well, then why doesn't God let everyone hear this angel music all the time if it's so beautiful? Oh, I think he does, but we don't hear it. Maybe because we let worldly wax grow in our soul's ears. Or maybe it's not our folly, but his wisdom and mercy that insulates us from the angels' music. Maybe God puts cotton in our ears because such big beauty would drive us mad. The sea almost does that already. Maybe if we heard those cosmic chords, so tremendous and remote, perpetually shaking the skies and making him that sitteth in the heavens to laugh, we would be unable to eat or sleep or reproduce or survive. Maybe it would be an unbearable weight of glory that would crush our spirit like a dancing elephant crushing a bug. A fire that would fatally enrapture and burn up our mind as a flame burns a moth. Maybe we would just disappear. Maybe the only way for us to survive in this angel-haunted universe is to be deaf and dumb. Very few of us can hear this music and make it into Brandenburg concertos or choral symphonies. But none of us can lay hands on that music any more than we can lay hands on a hurricane. It lays its hands on us. It plays on our organs. The composer of this music is, of course, God. The angels are only the players, and the planet is their instrument. That's probably the answer to the simple riddle of why I can sit and listen to that music forever. I'm a type A personality, and I never get tired of waves. Is there any man-made music you can listen to forever? But this music you can listen to forever. Therefore, this music is not man-made music. That's not fantasy, that's logic. It's also science, for it's empirically testable. God's music has testable effects. It heals you, it changes you, it refreshes you, whether by soothing you or by exciting you. The magic of the best man-made music pales and peters out after a few dozen repetitions, no matter how long and complex and varied it is. In contrast, God's water music is very simple. It varies less than a single measure of a symphony, and yet it never gets boring. Why? What did God put into it to make it that way? What is the sea's secret ingredient? What is its spiritual salt? It must be God's Spirit. No finite creature could do it, for nothing finite is inexhaustible. Everything finite eventually gets boring. And only God is infinite, so God's own Spirit must be in the sea, probably using his servants, those little created spirits that we call angels, as his instruments. I say little created spirits compared with God. Each one is larger than the universe. Just one angel would do, I think. One angel who fell into the sea, or fell in love with the sea, would be able to give it all its magic power. If you read the Silmarillion, his name is Ulmo. The sea, after all, is alive. It doesn't just contain life like a glass aquarium. It is itself alive. It's a kind of animal, almost a kind of person, much more like a somebody than a something. It breathes. So God's Spirit must be there. It's the source of all breath. The surf is its exhaling and inhaling. So are the tides. A wave is a hand reaching out to grab you, to get you, or to caress you, perhaps to tell you something. Waves are lips. Lips can kiss, or talk, or bite. Gentle little waves kiss the children who play in them. Larger waves kiss the surfers who ride them. Bigger waves than we can handle bite us. All waves speak, though we cannot translate their speech. That's probably because it's too simple, like God's. Maybe all it's saying is, I love you, 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 till the end of time. Waves are verbs, not nouns. The sea does not have waves, it waves. A wave, after all, is not just a thing that happens, any more than the wave of a human hand just happens. It's a sign. One who waves has something in mind. What does the sea have in mind when she waves at us, I wonder? What's dead has no spirit. What's alive does. The sea has spirit because she's alive. Even on a calm day when the waves don't break, the sea is never still. There's always that twinkle of the light in the air reflected on the face of the water, like the twinkle in the eye of Santa Claus. Even on the calmest days, she's a quivering jelly, like Santa's belly. And when there are no waves at all, there's still a swell, and any sloped shoreline of rock creates endless eddies of agitation. Nothing stops moving until it's dead, and the sea never stops moving at us, never stops waving at us. The sea, however, also has a dark side. There's a deep danger in the sea. Our mind as well as our body can drown in it. If you have the habit of staring into it like a lover into the eyes of the beloved, its eye can hold you like Medusa. The spirit of the sea is far stronger than the human spirit and captures it easily, especially in storms, which are the most exciting of all the sea's charms, but also the most destructive. Why do we find these most destructive things the most charming, captivating, enrapturing things? Why do we love what we fear? Perhaps we love the tumultuous waves, we storm lovers, because we love mirrors, for we are tumultuous waves ourselves. The sea is our know thyself mirror, our heart's biographer. And on that inner sea of our heart, there is an inner storm. So we love the crashing waves because we are crashing waves. Deep calleth unto deep. Deep heart hears deep sea calling. We love surf because we, the lovers, are full of surf. We seek our spiritual siblings, our kin. Then the inner wave can vibrate with the outer. And when that happens, we know that we fit, that we're part of the same cosmic order as the sea, that we're not ghosts or aliens or angels, but we belong here. We're more like fish than like angels. We and the sea are in the same play. We're the characters and the sea is the setting, written by the same author. We sense the same fingerprints, the same style on both the characters and the setting. I think Carl Sandburg sensed something like that when he wrote, "The sea is never still, it pounds on the shore, restless as a young hart, hunting. The sea speaks, and only the stormy heart knows what it says." The dark side of the sea, then, is not evil. It's fearsome and dangerous, but so are we. Its dark side attracts us not because we long for death and destruction. It's good people who love the sea when she is angry. Why? Good people do not love human anger. Why do they love the sea's anger? I think it's not our pride and arrogance that loves destructive storms, but the opposite, our humility and piety. I think we love the tumultuous and terrifying sea because we know we need humility, and she supplies our need. We have become so big and nature so small, so emptied of mystery by science, of danger by technology, and of poetry and myth by rationalism, that we no longer feel ourselves confronted by something we're even tempted to make into a goddess, something greater than ourselves. What a loss. I say, if you are not even tempted to worship the sea or the sun, you do not know them truly. The sun, then, to you is just a large, efficient radiator. I don't mean to be impious here. I believe the 10 Commandments, including the one against idolatry. But what would you say if you met someone who didn't need the commandments, not because he was holy, but because he wasn't tempted? For instance, a healthy young man who was never even tempted to lust. I'd pity him. Where is the glory of overcoming temptation if there's no temptation? So I say the sea is much more like a big goddess than like a big sink. We know much more about the sea than the pagans did, but we do not know the sea better. They at least knew lesson 1 that we have forgotten. There's something much greater than we are. The sea is one of the few remaining reminders of this in our world, and that's why she gives us the deep pleasure of humility. Yes, I said pleasure. After the first shock, humility is really a delightful virtue. We were designed for that pleasure, for the very big pleasure of being a very small child in a very large house. When we are at the shore, we know who we are. Little children playing with sandcastles. One of the most spectacularly intelligent human beings who ever lived, Sir Isaac Newton, said shortly before his death, "To myself I seem to have been only like a boy playing on the seashore, while the great ocean of truth lay all undiscovered before me." There's no better image than that to summarize our place in the universe. Little children playing in the waves. Waves of life, waves of energy, waves of Tao, waves of evolution, of predestination, of providence, waves of God stuff, the stuff God is, beauty, truth, and goodness. To children, the sea is a great big playmate, a mommy. Little children know what the beach is for. It's a sandbox, a toy box full of toys. Look what the children always do. In the surf, they go wild happy, playing in the skirts of the great big mother. They're wiser than adults are. They know what the universe is for. The whole universe is a big toy. It's for human delight. That's why any great artist creates. That's the image of God. What do you think God is, an engineer? Or a lawyer? Or worst of all, a Pharisee? He's an artist, stupid. Open your eyes. But when we become adults, we lose the knowledge that the universe is God's toy to play in. We lose the sense of being small and happy, so we become large and worried instead. The surf can make us all children again in 2 seconds, if only we let it. Do you have any idea what a revolution, what a transformation it would be if everyone on earth played in the surf 1 day a week? How much depression and suicide, how much hatred and violence and resentment and envy and boredom and addiction, how many wars and murders and plots and tyrannies would just go out like a candle? The sea is the peacemaker. How could surfers be soldiers? How could anyone drenched with the wisdom of play water ever think up this brilliant idea? It seems we have some problems. Hey, I got an idea. Let's deal with them this way. Let's all dress up in uniforms and go out and kill each other. The fountain of youth is not a myth. It exists. Ponce de Leon looked for it in Florida. That was not a mistake. You can find it in Florida because Florida has beaches. His mistake was looking for it inland. The sea is really a fountain of youth. When you run into her great mammalian arms, you become baby again. Mommy's arms cradle you, rock you, wash you. The dirt of dreariness is washed away, and you find underneath the dirt a surprisingly baby-like skin. Baby keeps soiling himself, but Mommy changes his diapers. The tides keep dutifully cleaning out our pollution. I don't remember how it felt to have my dirty diaper changed until I run into the waves. And then I know. Suddenly I'm cleaned baby, purring and cooing and chortling in Mommy's strong arms. Nothing else can be as Mommy as the sea. Nothing else can make us feel so baby as that Mommy can, no matter how old we get. It's a perfect toy. It's unbreakable and unlosable, always available and always alive. It plays and plays with you without ever getting tired or worn out. It dances with you and wrestles with you and boxes with you and tosses you around. It's just dangerous enough to be exciting, and you never have to put it away when you finish playing with it. At this point, I've talked too long, and I have only a few million words to go, so I will add only one last point. Namely, that the sea has something to do with technology, the defining feature of our civilization, the thing we're very, very good at. Machines, of course, are good things and natural to humans. After all, our own hands are tools. But they're somehow less real and less alive than we are. And we're becoming more like them. We have made our good servants into our bad masters. Now, 3 questions. Why did we do this? And how did we do it? And how can the sea teach us? Why did we do it? I think to keep busy, so we would not hear the holy silence. How did we do it? By giving our machines 2 precious things, time and power. The 2 things we designed them to give us more of. And everyone knows it's worked exactly the other way. We have less time. The more time-saving devices we have, we feel more harried and hassled and impotent and powerless than our pre-technological ancestors. They've turned us into worried slaves instead of leisured masters. Well, the sea is the antidote, because the sea is totally non-technological. And the sea gives us time when we give time to it. It's like God. Time is loaves and fishes. He multiplies them. It also gives us more power and more control over our lives if we first give up trying to control our lives, and if we just sit there quietly for an hour a week and watch waves. When we do that, we will emerge stronger, because we've left our obsession with strength back on the land. Paradoxically, the same sea that restores our inner passion also restores our inner peace, just like God. Wild Thing is also Calm Thing. She gives us a peace that the land cannot give, a passionate peace. She gives us a passion that the land cannot give, a peaceful passion, just like God, or almost. Comments, please.